What is up, everybody? Welcome to Wrestling with Emotion, the WWE show, as we are here to break down everything in wrestling. I feel like the whole world has shifted since the last time we all talked. On my right here, Maniac, Mike Partham on the bottom next to Ernie Green. How we doing, fellas? How we doing this weekend?
I'm great.
Love it.
As crazy as you get for no major pay-per-views or anything. Pretty insane for in the world of wrestling these last week or two. Well, there were a couple pay-per-views, but yes.
It's definitely, I think we've talked about it all in our groups and stuff lately, that it feels like it's like we're thriving, right? Like with wrestling, American wrestling, everything else. This is one of those couple weeks though that you like live for as wrestling fans to wait for, like the kind of action. We had 3 5-star matches, whatever you think of Dave Meltzer's ratings, but to put that in perspective, I didn't look at it back, but the fact that there was 3 of them from 2 different American promotions in the same week is probably unprecedented in some way. So we're really thriving with everything. And one of those performances where we'll have to start is Cody Rhodes at Hell in a Cell this week. I was there. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I was there in person. It was really surreal. I had to watch it back to really take in what was going on. I will tell you the shock and awe that Corey Graves was selling very hard on the commentary after was not exaggerating. I think he felt it. I've never heard, I don't know, like outside of Undertaker, the streak snapping, I've never heard like an audible, like gasped into stunned silence as much as that. And it really felt like that. But I want to hear what you guys thought. I guess just the initial unveiling and everything else, and then just the fact that once you realize he was actually going through with this entire match. Maniac, I'll start with you, and then we'll just go around the horn here.
For lack of a better pun, I thought all of the acclaim was very well earned for Cody Rhodes. This performance, it ranks up there with me for Kurt Schilling's bloody sock, Kirk Gibson knocking the home run to beat the Athletics in Game 1 of the World Series. This is a performance that transcends sports. It transcends entertainment. And yeah, you saw that. I didn't know it was when it was happening, but when you saw the reaction on social media of all places, it really showed you that this is going to be a performance and something that people are going to remember for a long time.
Well, all I can remember is the report saying, well, he can't make it worse. So that was my one comfort, for lack of a better word, when I saw the reveal. And like, okay, he's in a bad way, but if he's not going to get worse, and as long as Seth's a good worker, he can protect him and Cody can protect himself, and they're not going to do anything. I heard Cody was planning something on the long lines of a moonsault in this match or something like that. So all the crazy Hell in the Cell, Jeff Hardy type stuff had to get thrown out, and what you were left with was a gritty, just plodding along, not plodding along match, but it was just one move at a time, and with every move, everybody's on pins and needles. And to Meltzer giving it a 5-star rating, I think you have to have a 4-star great match, but there has to be an added element, like something intangible, something different in the air. That's why WWE has had one of these since 2011 at Money in the Bank, when no one knew what was going to happen. The WWE title was on the line, and no one knew which way was Punk going to resign, was Punk going to take the title and walk out or whatever. So I think that there's a magical quality to this match, but also kind of in a cringe way. Like, you admire Cody's grit for going through with the match, but at the same time, you're thinking WWE just backed themselves into a corner and they're just torturing Cody. I mean, Cody may say it's his decision, but at the end of the day, WWE is the one that can pull the plug on this. But let's give all the credit in the world to Cody Rhodes for just, being a tough SOB, and in a very legit way, not necessarily in a, we know Steve Austin's a tough SOB, but not like I don't think he ever had to go through anything like this.
Well, in fairness, he did break his neck in the ring, so.
Well, yeah, okay, very good point. Thank you.
But that's the splitting hairs and joking around manner. I will say this: my biggest criticism of Cody Rhodes over the years has been he's great, but he's also inconsistent. You can tell when he's bored. You can tell when his heart isn't into it. Well, his entire WWE run, you can't say that, because he's been absolutely fantastic. He's been absolutely focused, and this just proves how committed he is to being like the top star in WWE, if not, if they let him. And it just enforces 2 things about this year, that match was, number one, the commitment to Cody Rhodes and how good he is. And also, I've said all year that Seth Rollins is the MVP of 2022. I think overall he's the best wrestler in the world right now. It's the whole package of in-ring and character and personality, and the way that he helped out in this match and carried Cody and made sure he was protected. I think that just enforced that. I don't think anybody is at Seth Rollins' level last night. It's great as professional wrestlers as we have right now.
I think that's the crazy thing about that match, looking back, to give credit to Seth, that like you're saying there, is that if it was he started the first feud off with, I don't know, Bobby Lashley or something like that, would they have felt as comfortable going into that match? And that's no shame against Bobby Lashley. I'm saying there's very few people in that company who they would put in that position with him and feel that they would be able to take care of him in a proper way. I think Rollins is on the top of that list, and that's why he's keeps getting put in these situations. I mean, Rollins has taken a lot of, like, he's basically eaten feuds for the last 2 years. Since he lost the Universal title, he's lost a feud to Edge. He's lost to Cesaro at WrestleMania. He got whatever that stupid non-finish they decided to do at Royal Rumble with Roman and everything else. And then, obviously, like, Ernie, I think you said it the other day, the shot going into chain of shackles and losing 3 times in a row. And now they both feel like they are bigger deals, and this performance is because of it as well. But there's not another guy I would have rather had in the ring with him in that moment. And Mike, you go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you said very few people that WWE would have in the ring with him. I think that speaks to a lot of things. Their trust in Seth and him being such a great veteran, but the fact that there's no one else in WWE to take that top spot away from Cody Rhodes, as Ernie alluded to, that he's having such a good time in WWE with, because over in AEW, you're just loaded with guys that are more popular than Cody Rhodes, like your Eddie Kingstons and whoever else, and then your WWE, ex-WWE guys coming in, like the Bryan Danielsons and the Adam Coles. You know, where does Cody fit in that? He was trying to make his own little Cody-verse, but now in a land where there's just Roman and a bunch of guys, maybe Seth, if you give him the credit for what he's done, Cody can fit in so easily at the top of the card, and he has such a great story going through for him with his legacy with his father and trying to win the title that his father never did. So it's almost a slam dunk as long as Vince's ego doesn't get in the way. And with the reception Cody's gotten, and with, you know, this last match cementing him as this ultra babyface, it's just such a no-brainer for Vince to, you know, continue the story with him when Cody comes back, which, let's talk about that for a second. The estimation is that he's going to be out for 9 months with a complete pectoral tear. We've seen this before with John Cena. This was back in October of 2007. It was a complete pec tear for him too. And at the time they said 6 months to a year he was going to be out, and he returns at the Royal Rumble like 4 months later. Like, even beyond the best estimation that they had at the time. So we're about 9 months would put us about first third of February, I think, if it goes to full 9 months. And the Royal Rumble usually happens around the latter part of January. So even if it takes a full 9 months, if Cody comes back like a half month ahead of schedule, then that puts him on schedule for the Royal Rumble. But I think it's really 6 months, and they're just playing this out for a little bit longer estimation, as we discussed in the group chat, because they want to make it look like, oh, Cody's coming out of nowhere ahead of schedule. He's making this great return.
Yeah, it's the kayfabe 9 months. That's just my mind. Like, they get the kayfabe 9 months, and then you're gonna get Michael Cole, could it be? And then he comes out and he's like, oh my gosh.
It's the kayfabe 9 months, just like the Hollies combined to weigh 600 pounds when they tag.
What were you gonna say, Ernie?
So here's the thing. So I harken back to Edge in 2010 when he won the Royal Rumble, even though he was still in with the Achilles. They did something very, very non-physical for him in the Rumble, and he won the match, and then he didn't work another match again until WrestleMania in April. So even if he's not, quote-unquote, ready to be a full-time competitor, they could make it work in the Royal Rumble where he comes in and protects himself, wins the Royal Rumble where he does something really non-physical, comes in at 30, you know, this eliminates a few people, doesn't even have to use his arm that's injured, and he can, and then they give him the whole extra 3-4 months there to rehab, and he can be ready for WrestleMania fully. So I fully plan on him being at the Royal Rumble, whether he's 100% or not.
Yeah, I had that same thought where if Cody can wrestle a match without a pectoral muscle, I mean, surely after 8 or 9 months, it should be good enough, and he can still protect it a little bit and just throw guys over the top rope. It's minimal bumping involved in the Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
The Rock comes in during the Rumble, saves Cody, lifts his arm in victory, sends him to WrestleMania. What a storyline. No, but two things real quick.
Hopefully, I could get a few less boos there.
Oh, well, there will be a lot of moves if that happens. Two things, though, with WWE's schedulings, particularly. First, I think we were making fun of Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins for having wrestled so many times, like in the last 2 months on a previous show.
Times.
But that ended up benefiting them with Hell in a Cell, obviously. So it was 18 times in 65 days since Cody had debuted at the company. So they're wrestling basically every fourth day. So, yeah, obviously that paid off. And the other thing, Ernie, that was a great point that if, Cody comes back and wins, could potentially get, a road to WrestleMania where he's still rehabbing. The only thing is I wonder because over the last 5 years, the road to WrestleMania has they've tried to evolve it like there actually are stakes and it's not just building the storylines like it typically used to be. So it'd be very interesting to me whether he would be able to avoid those pay-per-views on the way.
Where this ends up all depends on whether The Rock's going to come in or not. Because if The Rock's coming in, he's going to face Roman and it doesn't need to have the title. You can run back Seth and Cody again, as much as Cody has been winning those matches every single time. If The Rock doesn't come back, you just have Cody dethrone Roman. I think that'd be a great story.
My dream is for Roman, like a scenario where Seth faces Roman at the Rumble and The Rock costs Roman the title as a heel. That'd be the greatest thing ever. And then you can take the belt off him, have Seth go with Roman. I am begging Rock to come back as like the 2003 heel where he's like above the authority. Like I never needed the authority. I'm sorry, the bloodline. I'm above the bloodline. Like I became the biggest star ever in spite of the bloodline. Like, and just go off about the Samoan dynasty and kind of be that heel. That's my dream. It's not going to happen.
You've been banging that Samoan drum for about a half a year now. that this match absolutely can happen. It just doesn't need the belt at all. It would be a complete stupidity to waste the belt on that match because you can put it with 2 other superstars or 3 other superstars.
Yeah, can you imagine the WrestleMania where night 1 is Seth versus Cody for the title and night 2 is Rock versus Roman in like a blood feud where they hate each other? It'd be amazing.
Are we sure we should put Cody on night 1? I think with the title on the line, you should put that at night 2. Well, you got to give the undisputed title its prestige.
Well, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like they're going to have a main event on both nights, and they make
sure.
They had Stone Cold Steve Austin as the main event, the biggest star ever as a main event on night 1. I'm not whether I agree or disagree. Just having those 2 matches on a WrestleMania, it would with the stakes and the actual storyline would be awesome for once.
So much has happened in the last 2 weeks that I forgot that like Stone Cold fought at WrestleMania. It's kind of crazy.
No, this is great because this steers right into what we were talking about. Because for the immediate future, the next up is Money in the Bank. So you want to talk about where they can really set a direction here wherever they want to in absence of Cody and Ernie. Doesn't it makes a lot of sense in my mind for Seth Rollins to just win Mr. Money in the Bank for the next 6 to 8 months, and he's lost all these feuds and everything. Give him that heat, and then no matter what, whether it's with Roman, whether it's with Cody, whoever else is in that title picture, he can be that opposite side of a main event like we're talking about here at WrestleMania. It feels like that makes the most sense going forward, but there are other options on Raw, and this, I said Raw here, but now I'm thinking just Money in the Bank as well, because that's going to give us a lot of answers going forward. Also, if they win Money in the Bank, do they cash in and win both titles? That is a very important question that has been unanswered. We don't know are these titles, is it unified now? Or is it just because Roman, if Roman loses, is that how they get out of it? Is he loses one of these titles so then Roman can still be carrying a title and then they can get their 2 title matches at WrestleMania? I could see that too. So what do you think for Raw, Money in the Bank, just the next couple months of programming without the Cody-sized hole that is going to have to get filled here?
You're right. It is a great opportunity for WWE to reshuffle the deck. I wouldn't put it past them to somehow put this briefcase on Madcap Moss or Shanky quite yet. No. I wouldn't quite say that. But yeah, Seth Rollins is the obvious pick. Not only that, with him having Money in the Bank, you can easily put 1 or 2 of your developing stars under him. Seth has shown in the past that despite some issues with AOP or Buddy Murphy, he can handle a stable. He can do his part in carrying another superstar. So I would love to see that. And yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. This is what I'll say is that WWE tends to do its best work when things happen that kind of screw them over and handicap them. Case in point, when the when they got left in Saudi Arabia and they had to do the NXT invasion ahead of time. Other things like that. Daniel Bryan ultimately winning at 30. But maybe they will make the best of what's going to be a tough situation part of them.
Well, I'll tell you what's next for Monday Night Raw. We're getting the great matchup of Madcap Moss versus Happy Corbin again next week on Monday Night Raw. Tune in. Oh, come on. As far as the Money in the Bank and the title picture, I'm just looking over the roster here. We have AJ Styles, Edge. I don't know if Edge has been written off, if he's got a legit injury, if he's going to take some time off or whatever. We can get to the whole Judgment Day thing later, but Finn Balor's the leader of that group now, but he's going to try and make that group something. I'm not putting the title on Omos anytime soon. Randy Orton's still out. Rey Mysterio's still feuding with Veer Mahan. I don't see anybody else other than Seth that can carry that Money in the Bank that's a possible up-and-comer, both in the ring and as far as popularity goes. Like, who could possibly threaten to take one of those titles or both those titles away from Roman Reigns credibly? Maybe Drew McIntyre. He's over on SmackDown, of course. And that's a whole mess with the Money in the Bank qualifier the other night from SmackDown. We don't know what's going on with that. As far as whether it'll be one title or both, I would think technically it'd be one title, because if the titles were on two different people, you could only challenge for one at a time. I don't think there's been any official announcement that they're going to be unified into one singular title. The networks still want each of their own champions. And if you're going to keep the titles separate but together for the time being, I would think that they would only have it for one title, so they can slowly get one title off of Roman and then eventually get the other title off of Roman. And I think that would be for the WWE title, because my feeling is they would want to continue his long, record-breaking Universal title reign for as much longer as they can.
I want to chime in real quick. Sorry, Ernie. Terrible timing for Sami Zayn to be aligned with the table, because Roman being off TV for so long with both titles would have been A+ material for conspiracy Sami Zayn, like running around in the back, just like screaming at people about.
Speaking of guys who are just fantastic, Sammy's had a great year and a half run too, and he's been great ever since he got the NXT, so that's not a surprise. McIntyre would be an interesting choice for Money in the Bank, because the rumor is they're going to fight over in Cardiff, that card. So he could say, "I'm going to cash it in there, make an easy way to have the Money in the Bank." Because I think everybody thought it was going to be Cody, so that's just an easy way to transition it. You have him challenge for a match that was already scheduled, which would be fine. Other than that, I can't see anybody other than Seth, and it would completely further the feud. It would further the Roman feud with Seth, which should never been just randomly stopped after the Royal Rumble, because Seth was so good in that match, and then also further the Cody feud. So that would take common sense and long-term booking, and with WWE, and we know that's not we know that neither of those things are their strong suit. So I'm not really holding my breath. It'll probably be it'll probably be like a returning like Rick Boogs or something like that, knowing that. But yeah, I think the only two options really are Seth or McIntyre.
Speaking of returning, we got someone returning in the next month or so, and his name is John Cena.
That's true. That is next for Raw. That might be the answer. I do want to leave you guys with this, because WWE slowly has been putting together more and more factions, or at least people that are like friendly with each other, more than they have in the past. We've got Bianca and the Street Profits with a natural connection, but they've also had interactions on TV and such. We had the Bull Live Club for a second there, but now who knows where that leaves AJ and Liv and their connection, everything else. We've got the Bloodline obviously running things. We've got Judgment Day now. Like, they're building up these different groups and everything else. And this is a tweet from Becky Lynch like a couple weeks ago. And the names of the three people here, I think, are very important, and the stories that they've been telling with them is Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and obviously Seth Rollins. Becky and Seth are both going crazy. We've been talking about that for a minute. Like, it's been a descent straight to them. Kevin is getting gaslighted right now, and we know that he obviously is a kayfabe friend of both Rollins and Becky. And also with Sami as well. And Sami last night just got threatened by Paul Heyman that if he lost that title match to Riddle, there would be some consequences for him. Or not title match, but Riddle Riddle's match to go on to the title match, and he lost, and Riddle won that match because we have Riddle and Roman Reigns next week. So it just seems like a pretty natural connection. And also, this would be the super group you put together if you want the hardcore fans, the fans who loves the indies and everything else, to maybe pay attention within the meantime, is put 3 of the ROH legends together in a group together and let them answer to the Bloodline for a couple months. Because what else would there really be an answer to? What else is the Bloodline going to do for 7 months if it's not something of this kind of group together? I guess Judgment Day could kind of count as that, but now with Edge out of the picture, I don't see them as that level. We already see we don't need to talk about Finn exploding on the ring anymore. I think we don't need to see that again in a major match with Roman Reigns. And that's why I thought about Finn for Money in the Bank, but then we're just going to make jokes about that all the way throughout his reign, so I don't really want to see that. But just something of food for thoughts. Let's get to AEW, which we haven't talked about for the first 20 minutes of the show. Maniac, CM Punk, injured out for some amount of time. Looks like foot surgery, probably like a month, 2 months. Jon Moxley is going to Forbidden Door for an AEW interim title match. He beat Kyle O'Reilly on Wednesday. He's going to fight either Tanahashi or Hiroki Goto, who fight at like 2 a.m. our time over in Japan tonight to see in that match. So what is your just general thoughts on how AEW is handling this situation? Do you like interim titles? That's been like a big topic. So what did you think when you saw all this news and what they decided to break it out as?
It's funny that AEW and WWE are in such similar situations with their top stars being injured, because I think the fan faith or expectation for both companies is so different. Right now, AEW is doing kind of a transcendent event with Forbidden Door. They have a lot of potential they can do there. They have a number of superstars they've built up within the company who could obviously be qualifying for this title, least of which Wardlow and a number of others. Moxley, you have a returning Omega, obviously, could be as well. And yeah, so the funny thing to me is just how different this situation is from WWE. Whereas I'm kind of like nervously looking through like one finger as to what WWE will do at Money in the Bank. Like, I'm anxiously excited to see what'll happen with the AEW title picture.
Yeah, just to compare and contrast the situations for a minute. I mean, Cody is their top babyface star, and he's going to be out for a while, just like Punk. But we've also got another absentee over in WWE, voluntarily so, their champ. And he apparently, we just mentioned the title match that's going to happen on SmackDown in a week's time. On SmackDown, mind you, not the next pay-per-view, which they were trying to sell at a stadium and had to move to a nice little arena over there in Vegas. But and I call back to Roman cutting promos on Brock Lesnar during their like second WrestleMania feud about how he's Vince's boy and there's going to be no repercussions even though he's not showing up as the champ, and et cetera, et cetera. I just think it's ironic. But as far as AEW's title situation, I think interim titles are not very popular, but they're kind of like ties in sports. They're like kissing your sister, so to speak. It's not the best. It's not the worst thing, but it's also not the best thing. But I think Tony Khan made a good point, and I share his opinion that since you have interim titles in boxing, since you have interim titles in UFC, regardless of how you think they're being handled, if they're being handled well or not, it does give you something to fight for, and it does give you an incentive to do that return match, to do that unification match down the road, as opposed to, say, Finn Balor winning the first Universal title and not getting a rematch for 2 freaking years. If you had Finn Balor an interim Universal title, you'd have been able to do that match a lot sooner because you would have to. But I think it's great to have Punk still be the champion, because I don't want to see an AEW title reign end after like a week or so. That would muddy it up, I think, more so than Moxley being the interim champion, which I think we're going to get at Forbidden Door.
Interim titles work great when booked right, and they're going to look horrible if not booked right. I think this is going to be just okay. And we don't really know how long Punk's going to be out for. So honestly, with an interim title, I hope that he's out for a longer period of time, because then you can make the interim title strong. If he's out for 2 months and Moxley has the interim title for a month and then they wrestle and he loses to Punk after a month of holding the interim title, it really didn't mean something. But if he was out for 6 months and he's, beating and he's, taking on a lot of challengers and turning them down and really making himself a strong champion, and then they collide, that's going to be a great match. So
Yeah, that's the range of the estimation. And everybody
How
was
long?
guessing 4 to 6 weeks for a regular foot injury, but now
Okay.
but the reports are that by the end of the year. That's very vague.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again, that could be
By
the
the
element.
end of the year.
It could be
That's
the
so
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
And again, that could be the element of surprise, just like WWE, where
Yeah.
people are thinking, oh, he's going to be out until December, then October he shows up, and everyone's happy and shocked and excited. So, again, I have no problem with it because they want to have a champion and they want to defend. I think they have I think it's cool they actually have prestige and they don't want the title to just be sitting on the counter like WWE's doing right now with Roman. And I mean, it's one or the other, to be honest with you. You can't, you know what I mean? You can't be upset that the title's being defended on one and not on the other. So I actually think it's cool that they're taking the title picture seriously. Whether it's going to work out great, I don't know, but at least they're trying to make it seriously.
Ernie, are you telling me that you didn't enjoy Rey Mysterio's interim WWE title run on July 25th for 1 hour and 47 minutes?
I went to use the restroom and I missed the whole thing.
It was sad. It was a sad day for Mysterio fans.
And
Yeah,
the fact that that's also CM Punk too.
Yeah, let's transition over to a similar situation, if we can, Jake, involving MJF and his supposedly leaving the company, not unlike Punk cutting his promo in 2011 and leaving the company very abruptly. Back then, Punk's leaving the company lasted for an all abrupt of 8 days because they had to bring him back because they needed their SummerSlam match of Cena versus Punk. I don't know why they couldn't just do Mysterio versus Cena and just draw Punk out a little bit more. But AEW is drawing out MJF a lot better because they're just on every platform. They're cutting ties to him, no YouTube videos, unfollowing him on everything, and not even mentioning him on the program. Tony Khan saying no comment everywhere else. I mean, if it was a shoot, we would have heard by now a report that MJF has been legitimately fired because he's just too much to handle, and he went off script a little bit on his shoot promo that we gave him to air his grievances or whatever. But I think as long as everything's cool behind the scenes, I think they're handling this right because there's a lot of intrigue here, and we don't know where this is going, or where it's going to end up.
And when he shows back up, I mean, it's going to be huge. And what if it's tied directly into something with CM Punk or something like that, and they match those timelines up or something? I'm in agreement. I love that they're just going into everything and just taking him off absolutely everything. Really, I thought we were going to get at least like some kind of comment from Shivani this week or something, being like MJF, unlike MJF or whenever they like shush him or something like that, whatever. Make it obvious that they're trying to do it, but nothing. Like little rodeo silence.
We've got more references and little pot shots from WWE to Sasha and Naomi that we have from AEW to MJF.
Yeah, dude, seriously, I was watching Raw. I don't watch Raw live very often, and watching Raw live to see them bury Sasha and Naomi as they were leaving was one of the most surreal moments I've ever seen. It was incredible. I felt so bad for Corey Graves in that moment, to be honest. But so for this title, I'm in agreement. If the timeline, you would think if Punk's about 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, whatever, makes sense for this to be at All Out then, right? Like it would be Punk, probably Moxley at All Out. There's none of you that think that there's any chance that they're going to swap over some titles and really sell the Forbidden. I think that titles are going to switch at Forbidden Door, but is it potential that Hiroshi Tanahashi or it has to be Tanahashi. And the thing is, they've had this built-in story. Moxley and Tanahashi have been trying to fight each other, get a singles match for like 2 years now. So there's going to be a lot of story behind it. Any chance that it's the New Japan guy and Tony is just like, fuck it, let's just really try something here.
It depends on how long and how good their relationship is. Like how well does Tony trust this new partner company with even an interim title? And how much is Tanahashi going to show up on television? Is he going to pop in every once in a while to cut a promo or actually do a title match?
Yeah,
I love the idea. I love the idea of Tanahashi just becoming AEW's Lesnar. Just shows up once every 3.5 months. Someone else cuts a promo for him. He flexes and he just walks off.
I can see Tanahashi winning. I give it about a 30% chance.
I think the biggest thing is the G1, obviously, which takes up a lot of time for any wrestler. It's about a month-long loop that they're doing and everything. And Tanahashi would be a guy they'd usually pencil in for that, and you pencil in like at least 3 4.5-star matches with Tanahashi in the G1, whatever. But there were also reports that there are AEW guys that want to go do the G1 and they can't right now because of different storylines and such. And maybe this is a way to some of those guys do it. It's like, hey, like, we'll give you our to go do the G1 and do whatever you need to do. But I think there's going to be some different title stuff. And I do want to talk about that too, because they debuted a new title and it wasn't the title that we thought it was going to be. The All Atlantic title. What are your impressions of the All Atlantic title, and how do you think it's going to end up being used? Ernie, you start.
I think it's going to be fine. I think they want a title where they can how New Japan is kind of done like a New Japan US faction type thing, where they're kind of they do shows in the United States. It's not all New Japan guys, but it's guys who are in America who wrestling fans like. Who are like, oh, cool, they're affiliated with New Japan. We can go watch them, and they're going to be in good matches and stuff like that. I think the All Atlantic title is going to be a title where they can go defend it somewhere else, where they can. I can see that being defended at Wrestle Kingdom versus someone in New Japan. I mean, the name All Atlantic title, when they talk about the Japanese, even though
they were really selling to Great Britain too. They were like they really wanted to let us know that Great Britain loves AEW. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think it's like the old school WWE European title, but they're actually going to defend it like not in the it's going to be a title where it's going to be more prominent outside of the United States, and I don't think it's going to be a thing that's going to be defended all that much on AEW TV as much as the storylines. Kind of like I would compare it to maybe like the NXT UK title or something like that, where you're going to see maybe you'll see a title match here and there in the United States, but eventually I think it's just a title where they can really expand their market to overseas. I think that's all that is, and they're going to have some good matches, crossover matches with people from Japan and England and things like that. So it's cool.
I do like that idea, Ernie. I think this is going to be what we thought, or what should the European title back in the day should have been, because initially the British Bulldog won that, and then it's just a bunch of American guys just winning it as a third or secondary title. But I mean, some people were pointing out, well, AEW has way too many title belts now. WWE, I think somebody crunched the numbers about having more title belts per wrestler as their percentage or something like that, and that includes all the NXT titles. The only difference is they have their own show for NXT, and for the time being, they have to sort of store all their ROH champions and titles on the main AEW shows. So once ROH gets going, and they're going to have their own pay-per-view in a few months from now. Once ROH gets its own show and they can push all those titles over there, then there'll be a lot more room for an All-Atlantic title and the eventual trios titles, which we're going to get once Kenny Omega gets back here, for the love of God. As far as the All-Atlantic title being defended overseas, I like that idea. That would make it very unique. That would give AEW an international flavor. I only just wonder, I mean, I look at the bracket here, and it's all international guys. There's no American-born people in the bracket, at least immediately. Does that mean that only international people are eligible to compete for the title? Because if you look at the belt, you do have an American flag in there. Does that mean that it's defending on American soil, or
I'm thinking that it'll be a New Japan wrestler who is from America, which they have a couple options there. That was my thinking, at least.
Well, I mean, overall,
we don't have the two slots.
After the title is made at the Forbidden Door, whoever wins it, who's eligible to challenge it for it going forward? Is it only international guys, or can American guys challenge it for it too?
That's a great question. I mean, they were not very clear about what was going to happen with it at all. And I think that was kind of part of the purpose. I think you guys are both, it's like in the middle of where you guys both are, in my opinion. Like, I definitely think this is the title to get defended all over the world. Like, this is the title that Penta is going to go take to
AAA,
have a feud in AAA or whatever, or it's just going to be stuck over in New Japan for 3 months, 4 months with somebody else, because then it's just getting that name on all these other shows for a consistent amount of time.
Yeah.
It's not a title they're going to miss. It's like, we're already complaining about them not having enough time to, represent all the women, people's complaints about the women's title and anything else, whatever. So it'll be fine if this title is not directly involved with AEW television from a week-to-week basis. But I do think for the big shows like pay-per-views, if you're just having other wrestlers like from, whether it be New Japan, like you said, anywhere else in the country that's not directly affiliated, it's great for the business in general. What do you think, Maniac? Do you like more titles?
Yeah,
Who doesn't love more titles?
plain and simple. What we're watching is AEW trying to build out its brand. Eventually, there might be a third show, or even just moving these titles to dark matches or things like that. So I have no problem with them trying to build out the brand, get a little familiarity there. Yeah, it's funny to think about like how irrelevant the European title became in WWE because it lost the idea that it was European wrestlers going for it and stuff like that. Just like not so differently. The 24/7 title comes back. It was something that everybody loved back in the Attitude Era. But all of a sudden, you're allowed to say, like, oh, the 24/7 title isn't up for grabs right now, or this is a match. So, again, you got to keep the vision of this title, and AEW does that with match rankings and things like that. If they can keep that focus, I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Can we point out that, as much intrigue as it would be for a New Japan wrestler to win the All-Atlantic title, having the Atlantic title defended in New Japan Pro Wrestling, it's meant to be the international title, but calling the All-Atlantic title kind of makes it silly that it would be in Japan. What are you going to do?
Yeah, whatever. If they're going to have it, go ahead.
No, it's just you're right. Like the name could have been a little better. They could have hit it something. They should honestly wish they would have just named it the AEW Intercontinental title and just been like, fuck it. Like it's not
and
like
assumed for trademarks and whatnot.
New Japan had an Intercontinental title for a long time.
Okay.
It wasn't a long time. They brought it in and then elevated it and then they folded it back into their heavyweight title. But
maybe AEW should have had this tournament in Rio de Janeiro.
I'm still waiting to see that footage, by the way. So, talking about Davey Boy Smith winning the European title harkens back to the days where Shawn Michaels was the biggest POS in the history of wrestling because he completely conned Vince into saying, "Hey, I should win this title that he doesn't even care about in England over Davey Boy Smith," and then he promised to. Oh, well, we'll just make it even bigger, and we'll go back, and then I'll let him beat me for the title again and make it even bigger. And then, of course, the Montreal thing happened, and Davey left the company. So, Shawn Michaels circa 1997 was the biggest, this piece of human trash. He literally completely buried the European title. And if you remember, he defended it against Triple H, where Triple H pushed him down and jumped up and down the ropes 30 times and then pinned him. So let's give credit where credit's due that Shawn Michaels just completely buried that title, which was a great idea, honestly.
One of the greatest matches of all time, the collar and elbow tie-up of Doom. One of my favorite matches ever.
Different, bro. That was different. Watching, oh man. Yeah, late 90s Shawn Michaels was just a different energy. There's nothing like it. They were
There was nothing he could tell Vince that he wouldn't get away with before that.
They had no choice. He was their only marketable star at the time.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. If Davey Boy Smith had left with Bret Hart to WCW, he would have taken that title with him. So essentially, Shawn Michaels saved 2 titles from going to WCW.
That match, he was such a. Have you ever watched that match, by the way, where they're just taunting? They're taunting him, and then they went off script and they started taunting British Bulldog's sister with a disability. It's just such a. It's funny when it's just what a douchebag. You know what I'm saying? They're it was peak Shawn Michaels being a complete a-hole.
Yeah, there's a reason he made a lot of enemies in the business for a while there.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of the Michaels stories. It's crazy to see the stuff that they got away with. What else we got here? Paige is leaving WWE. Does that interest any of you? Do you think that she's going to wrestle again? We've seen people come back from neck injuries more and more, so it feels like it would happen eventually. I'm surprised that she wasn't ever allowed to come back to WWE, to be honest. It was a little shocking to me, but
we've seen Daniel Bryan come back from his injuries, and after he fought for his dreams and got cleared by every doctor in the country and finally brought this back to WWE and said, hey, I want to wrestle again. We've seen Edge come back from neck injuries as well. But then again, there's some people who haven't come back or want to keep their health intact. Everybody keeps asking April Mendez, AJ Lee, whether she would come back with her neck injuries, and she's feeling fine nowadays, but she's got a lot of stuff going on. I think as long as you have a lot of side projects and you're invested in your health going forward, I think that's might be enough for someone to not try to get back in the ring. But Paige has been, teasing this every so often on her Twitter account, saying she wants to get back in the ring. I think WWE sees that it's not a long-term investment for someone who's, may or may not be healthy enough to wrestle in the long term. So they're just going to let her contract run out and she can go do whatever, and they won't be on the hook for it.
Exactly what I was thinking. I didn't want to just copy your thought, but basically either A, they don't want to take the risk with her situation specifically, or B, just want to let her run out and play safe. Because obviously it seems like there's a lot of parallels to the Daniel Bryan situation. Obviously, Daniel Bryan's wife was employed by WWE at the time, which obviously made things a little bit different as well. But yeah, it just seems like WWE playing it safe and letting this contract run out. And yeah, I expect to see Paige in some form in the ring again for sure.
The one big difference between Daniel Bryan and Paige is we've never heard Daniel Bryan and a million stories about him having attitude problems.
That's true.
So I think that this is kind of like a mutual thing where WWE's like, listen, like we really, I mean, we have a ton of women that we have that can work. Even though Paige was a very, very good wrestler when she wasn't a good character, I think it's just time for them to part ways. I can see her coming back, but I think they just need I think they need a breakup right now from each other.
Wasn't Paige like?
Wait, hold on. WWE has a ton of women that can work. This is breaking news here.
No,
I don't think that women's roster, despite what Becky Lynch says, is in the best shape.
They have a ton of women they're not doing anything with. Maybe not work, but they have a ton of women that are there. They're not doing anything with anyways. Now you're going to add Paige to the picture and have her do nothing. That's kind of my point more than are they great 5-star workers? No. But they're there. I mean, they're there to literally work, not work like a great match. I'm just saying they have a bunch of they have a bunch of women. Let me change that. They have a bunch of women who are employed that they're doing nothing with. So
I'll tell you what. If I'm anyone outside of the Four Horsewomen, or I mean, obviously even the Four Horsewomen,
not even the Four Horsewomen,
or Ronda Rousey, I'm like talking to AEW like ASAP. Like, honestly, because as you've seen, there have been a lot of former WWE women that have translated right over and been in that top 5, that top 6 discussion right away.
Well, it's kind of a catch-22 because AEW needs more like good women wrestlers.
But they need to give more time too.
Exactly, and then WWE is just wasting some of these women. So it's like it's a good combination. You know, like I think Ember Moon, whatever. I forgot her new name, but
Athena.
Yeah, sorry. I think she's going to do fantastic in AEW. To be honest,
I agree.
Agreed.
Like she should have in WWE. I mean, people forget. I mean, her matches with Asuka and NXT were probably some of the best women's matches. I mean, the only other women's match I can think that was better was the first Sasha and Bayley match. You know, so she's fantastic, and I think she's going to do a great job there. But I think Paige and WWE just need a breakup.
Let's touch on the AEW women's title picture, specifically the TBS title. Athena's coming in, and she's probably going to have a program with Jade Cargill in the near future. But it seems all the momentum is on Chris Statlander with her new attitude change, and the crowds are getting a lot behind her. Is that where you see where AEW should go with the TBS title? Is that Chris eventually gets to be the one to dethrone Jade Cargill?
I don't want Jade to lose yet. Like, that's the thing. It's
even
Athena, or like, I love Athena and Statlander, but I would still just keep going with Jade and let them go at her let them go at her one time, go away for maybe even like very soon. Like Statlander gets it in the next week on Rampage is Statlander versus Cargill or something like that, or whichever one you think that it should be. Do it early, have them lose, and then at All Out we can get that match. That's what I think, though. But that's where I'm at. I think it's one of those two for sure.
Well, you might run into the problem of if Jade defeats everybody, then who's left? It's the Roman Reigns problem. When you've got no title contenders left and you got to start from scratch, then who is going to be the one to take it off of her?
No, I agree.
The thing, I agree. I want to see Athena and Jade Cargill eventually fight, and I wouldn't hate to see Athena take out Jade Cargill. I can't do that within the next 90 days, though. Yeah. That has to be at least 90 days.
I don't want to
let Athena get some big wins. Let her have some feuds. Let Jade Cargill, I feel like Jade has finally gotten to the point. I know she's had an undefeated streak for this long time, but where she is nearing that Roman tier where it's absurd and it's eyes
but you
on
know what it is though
out.
too? Is Stokely Hathaway, I love smart Mark Sterling, but Stokely Hathaway is another level at this shit, as a wrestling manager. And ROH was where he did his best work. He was great as Malcolm Bivens in NXT, but he's the best because he doesn't give a fuck. He's going to say outrageous shit on AEW television that are going to pop people. I think he is perfect, and literally the timing for him to slide into that role really is going to just elevate. And then I got the baddies. They're color coordinated. Red Velvet's wearing all her red. Kiera Hogan's in her all blue next to Jade, whatever color she's rocking. Like, they look official now as a group. Ernie, what did you want to get in on here?
No, I think it's just I think the three of them are going to carry that TBS title picture for the next 6 months. Statlander, Athena, and Jade. And I agree, Jade should keep. I mean, Jade. I mean, the end game is eventually to try to push Jade to be the actual world champion, right? So, I think what's going to happen eventually, she'll either lose this. I mean, I would like to, if it were me booking it, I would have her lose to Athena and then Statlander take the belt off Athena after even a longer like kind of push to the title, and then Cargill's going to work her way up to the main title. So, which is how it's supposed to be, by the way. I mean, that's how, you get the minor title, but you move to the major title. I mean, watching WWE makes you forget that sometimes. That's how the order of operations is supposed to be.
That's why I loved Wardlow this week. I know that they did it as like a respect to Punk thing and everything, but Wardlow coming out and being like, I want the TNT title felt so important, because it's like, oh, this dude who was on this unstoppable streak, he's finally a wrestler. What is the first thing he wants to do? Go win the TNT title. Like, it just makes it feel like a bigger deal when you have the wrestler makes the title and the title makes the wrestler, right? Like, there's a give and take with it and everything else. But when the wrestlers are acting like it's a big deal, like you said, we have been with Jade and everything else. That's been the biggest problem with the women's division as a whole now. Like, there's no shade to Thunder Rosa. They've just done so good with Jade that the TBS title, like, those segments feel like the main women's segments, because she is such a draw to when you're watching the show and everything, that I feel like that's where Tony's gotten caught up with the stuff with Thunder Rosa and everything. Hopefully they're working it back in. And I honestly think once ROH has a weekly TV, some sort of weekly TV deal, that's going to help dissipate not the women's roster as much, but the men's roster to ROH, and they can send more men, because they have such a flux of men's talent that they can work in ROH that will naturally allow the women's time to fill in on the shows. I really think that's what they're going to end up with, and it will really help out. But those deals haven't come out yet. We don't know what they're going to be, but it has to be in the plans. Like, there's a ROH pay-per-view next month. Like, Tony has to have something in the works for ROH weekly television. That'll be a big game changer too. Anybody else have anything?
One last word. I think you got to be careful about putting the title on Athena. As much as she's come with great fanfare and people are glad to see her, I don't think you put the title on someone very new to AEW. I think you have to build their brand within the company first. And I think there's a lot of fan support behind Chris Statlander, an AEW original. I think she's eventually, at some point, whether it's all out or in the near or distant future, it's got to be the next TBS champ.
I agree. And Tony's been pretty loyal to the originals every time. Like, when the new people come in, it usually they have to earn it to get to a title spot. They've been pretty consistent with that. Last thing is Dominion is tonight. It has obviously implications on AEW as we go into Forbidden Door. Well, I'm sure none of you guys are watching live. I'm planning on waking up early tomorrow morning and watching a replay. But the main event, Jay White, Kazuchika Okada, we'll see who they end up with. This is looking forward to Forbidden Door. One of those guys will be facing potentially Adam Cole and Adam Page in a triple threat match for the IWGP title. Do you like the idea of someone not going one-on-one for the IWGP title, or do you want to see the Adams again in a big title match in Chicago? Because I think either way it'll be great, but it is a different feel of just having a one-on-one singles match with Okada or Jay White.
I think you could do the one-on-one for the building of the AEW brand. I think if you throw the Adams in there and have one, like Adam Cole could hit the knee and have it all wrapped up, having them screw each other out of the title obviously adds to their, story they're telling. I mean, the thing that blows me away about Dominion, though, and I guess, I've seen the Bullet Club come into all these promotions and everything, but, I mean, this card is basically like 60% Bullet Club.
Bro, Bullet Club has 17 members now. They've added, they are up to 17
so I'm looking at all these matches, like they split up Gallows and Anderson. They're in separate like singles matches. So I mean, it's crazy. That just blows me away. Even though, again, like I've said, we've seen Bullet Club obviously prominently in the U.S. by this point. And the other thing that just blows me away about Bullet Club, which I still have to understand, Jay White just looks like the biggest piece of shit every time I see him. Yeah. He just looks like the biggest scumbag piece of shit, and I'm waiting for him to really prove who he is from what's been told to us in AEW. So I'll be checking in on the highlights at least.
One question I have is, how might Kenny Omega figure into this? Kenny Omega's been a former rival of Jay White, and from what the little snippet we had of him at the video games headquarters or whatever, I think it was on Being the Elite, he may not think the most of Adam Cole currently, kind of sort of running things when he told the Bucks to, take care of business, and Adam Cole is creating this, undisputed Elite faction. I think it's got to either be Cole and or Jay White challenging for this title on one side or the other. I don't think you have Jay White versus Adam Cole. They're kind of buddies right now. I think the best idea would be I'm not sure for the Forbidden Door aspect. I think Okada versus Hangman Page, because it's like two guys you've never seen in the ring together, going at it one-on-one for a title. But if you want to throw a run-in of Kenny Omega either during the match or after the match in, I think you either put Jay White or Adam Cole in some capacity, whether it's one-on-one or a triple threat match, into this picture.
As y'all can see, I'm ready. Look, I got my New Japan shirt on. I'm ready for tonight. I think it's only like 11 o'clock my time, so I think I'm going to
that's beautiful.
It is beautiful. I think I'm going to try to stay up for it and try. Jay White, in my opinion, is like the last 3 years has been the most improved wrestler in professional wrestling.
Agreed.
And he's absolutely fantastic. I was there when he fought a G1, the G1 Supercar, when he fought Okada, when he lost the title to Okada at MSG, and that was a fantastic match. And I thought he was much improved then, and he's gotten even better in the last 3 years. I'm like, he's like the dude that, like, he just comes off as such a scumbag, and I say that as a compliment. Like, he's the dude that, like, hits on your girlfriend at the bar when you go to the bathroom. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's just that guy. And I would like to see, Okada's fantastic, and I love Okada, but like a Jay White match with like Adam Cole, I think it'd be great, because Adam Cole can still play even though he's not really a face. I think like in Chicago, they love him. He's going to be the face anyway. So he doesn't really have to change his character much to fight Jay White. He can just be himself, and the crowd's going to be behind him, and they're going to be behind him even more because Jay White is such a sniveling scumbag, And Okada versus Adam Page, you kidding me? That's going to be such a great, especially if they do it like the Japanese style match, like a hard-hitting, strong style match. Goodness gracious, that would be a match. I mean, that we would be talking about that match, I think, for weeks afterwards.
Now you got me thinking, Ernie. Now you really got the wheels turning now, because they like Hangman's promo the other day, like, yes, he called out for the title or whatever, but he said, he made the point, I want Okada, right? Like, he didn't even mention Jay White. And what if Jay White winning tonight makes way more sense storyline wise in New Japan. In New Japan, everything ways going. Like, Okada can be champion forever. Like, he's just like, you can put the title on Okada and you're going to be happy with it. But if they're going into a big Bullet Club thing, like you were mentioning, Maniac, Bullet Club's all over this card. They've clearly been like the announcement of Forbidden Door was mentioning Bullet Club. So I've always thought that Forbidden Door was going to be a way to just be like a big, I've always just imagined it as like a big Bullet Club show, like an old NWO show, pay-per-view instead of WCW, like even that kind of thing. I'm thinking back to All In, even when it literally said in the middle of what now this basically the AEW set, and it says is Bullet Club sitting up there in the front too. Like they've had this stretch obviously around there. Jay White winning makes a lot of sense tonight, and then you still get those are your three singles matches that you go to town with. You've got Bullet Club battling each other, and then maybe Kenny does become involved some way in that. And then Okada and Page, it can be a number one contender, or it can be whatever, and they can just put on some kind of wrestling classic, and it doesn't really matter who loses it because there's no title involved. That's a really interesting booking. And I mean, you could see those three matches like on the outside of United Center and people being very excited to see them up there.
What are the chances we think of an AEW guy winning the IWGP Championship?
I think all of this is very possible, like any title being switched, because I think this is just the start. This feels like them announcing like now everything's in play. Like now, like how many AEW guys show up to Dominion tonight? I feel like there has to be some AEW talent in Japan tonight for that show. There's been obviously guys coming to Dynamite. This is their second biggest show, right, Ernie? I'm right in that. I'm pretty sure it's their second biggest besides Wrestle Kingdom. Wrestle Kingdom's a level ahead of everything else, obviously. But yes, Dominion is their biggest show outside of that. It would make a lot of sense and get a lot more excitement for the American crowds who don't know what, who the people who are not as familiar with New Japan that are going to be wanting to tune into Forbidden Door. If you wake up on tomorrow morning on Twitter and you see, Undisputed Elite showed up to fight Bullet Club or to back up Jay White in the main event of whatever, that's going to get a huge reaction on the internet and everything. And Tony is all about that. Like, we know that he can he can build excitement for a pay-per-view. So I'm really excited for the unknown of Dominion tonight, which is kind of like the first time it's had that. New Japan show for me has had that feel since obviously like the Elite left and everything else with all that fanfare, because they were really bringing in those unknown elements, and with the ROH involvement that was heavy there. We're really back at it. I mean, it's crazy. Crazy time to be a wrestling fan. One
thing I want to reiterate is that, and what Tony Khan has done with AEW is that there are so many different ways. He's made this that there are so many different ways that this company can go booking wise and storyline wise, and they're all good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's a good thing. Like we've just exchanged a bunch of ideas, and I didn't hear a bad one among the bunch. So that's the good thing about AEW is that they put themselves in a position that no matter what they do, it's still going to be enjoyable. Where the other place, it's just
needs to hit. Everything's got to click exactly right for it to be magic.
The other place, like I said, it just feels like everyone's a placeholder for name redacted as the champion. You know what I'm saying? We're like, I thought the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view was great because I felt the talent guy had room to breathe and actually showcase themselves. And I think if they're actually allowed to do that for several months on end, I think the product can turn around. But AEW is just so many great possibilities and so many great scenarios, and they're all good. It'll all be good wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, that's a guarantee about Forbidden Door. It might be one of the best top to bottom wrestled cards we've ever seen in a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
The matches they're going to try to put together. I mean, some like a Tanahashi Moxley in a match. If that's what it ends up being. That could be. I think Dave already has 5 written down for it. Like walking into the arena, because the energy for one thing is going to be crazy when Wild Thing comes out and everything else. Like, I don't even know that it's a lot of unknowns. I think we'll have a lot of answers coming out of Dominion. Anything else before we go?
How do we feel about Gunther as the new Intercontinental Championship? Is that going to be a better championship now going forward?
I think it's Rusev's U.S. title run.
Mm. So he's just going to run through guys. There's not going to be a lot of legit contenders. It's just going to be whoever we got on the roster that can work a match. Just throw him against Gunther and have Gunther squash him or whatever.
Yep. I feel like the only mistake they've made with Gunther so far was changing his damn name to Gunther.
You know what?
They changed his music again. They changed his music for a second time.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, had they just had him, had he just come to NXT as Gunther, I don't think anybody would have cared. Because like Jericho changed his name to Sami Zayn, Kevin Steen, Kevin Owens. It happens, but they changed it going from NXT to WWE. It was kind of lame. But honestly, I'm actually surprised how few wrestling fans actually liked NXT, like the mainstream WWE wrestling fans. Like they were actually like, I remember when Maniac brought the show in Buffalo where NXT invaded. And I asked a friend of mine who went to the show, like, what'd you think of it? He's like, oh, it was cool to see all the new NXT. I never heard those NXT people. I'm like, you never heard of Keith Lee or you never heard of Shayna Baszler? Like, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, that sucks. Like that. And I think a lot of wrestling fans are like that. So I think stuff like that only matters to us. And we're unfortunately like intelligent wrestling fans, educated wrestling fans are the minority now, so. But Gunther himself has been fantastic. I think his run is good, and I can see him being a future world champion if he keeps it up. Because he's a fantastic worker. One of my favorite matches ever was him against Pete Dunne at NXT Takeover. I think it was New York City. Yeah, New York City. One of the best shows I've ever been.
Speaking of name changes,
I'm thinking about it right now. I love Butch. I'm sold on Butch now.
No, so am I. And another thing, he's fantastic.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh,
is he just going to be Scrappy Doo for this entire run of his?
Yeah, I think
so.
I hope so.
Really?
So. Yeah. By the way, remember when WWE under its umbrella had a pay-per-view where they had Gunther versus Pete Dunne, and then 2 out of 3 falls, Johnny Gargano versus Adam Cole back to back, and that happened under the guise of WWE. Can you believe that?
What a world we were living in the WWE, man! It's fucking crazy.
Under Triple H.
Yeah, under Triple H, exactly. Yeah, Triple H and Regal. Yeah.
That's what I'll never forget for the rest of my life now. Regal saying that the next 3 guys they were bringing in were Garcia, Starks, and Wheeler Yuta, and imagining those guys in a feud with Hit Row and Swerve still there in NXT. It's like a whole different universe that could have happened. That changed like that, like literally overnight. All of a sudden, NXT was no longer black and gold, and you're like, okay, what is this going to be?
And all the aforementioned are in AEW.
You know, and the sad thing is Braun Breaker is a fantastic wrestler, and I feel bad for him. He's got to carry that shit show.
Braun will be on SmackDown soon enough. They need him.
I hope so.
They need him.
Yep, we need some Reigns fodder for the Survivor Series Rumble season.
One other thing, the shocking thing that happened on Raw, I touched on it earlier. Judgment Day, Finn Balor joining, but then Edge being kicked out. And supposedly because it was Edge's vision and he didn't want it to be more supernatural, unlike the head honchos of WWE. And we don't know if Edge is going to be turned around as a babyface, if he's going to be taking time off, if he's injured for a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Broken orbital face fracture or something.
Well, that's
like
the kayfabe.
That's what they're giving us. I don't know how long that's technically in WWE land that's out. I think it is smart to bring him back as a babyface now in the midst of the Cody news and everything else. I think that's probably, it's got to be a little bit of a give, and maybe because we talked about it, I think the other day, it would have been. I see them, if it was always the plan to get rid of Edge because of the supernatural thing, and they still wanted to do it, they could have waited until and had a match at done it at Money in the Bank or something like that. Like Edge has a match and they do it or whatever. But
if they were going to do this thing, they should have done it at Hell in the Cell. They should have made that angle where Finn Balor turns and joins the group and then kicks Edge out the next night. And sure, you need Edge as another babyface, but they didn't do it because Cody Rhodes is out. They did it because Edge didn't want to play ball with what WWE wants to do.
Agreed.
So you can't give WWE the benefit of the doubt for this.
Hell no. It always seems so stupid to me, truth be told, when someone switches like the night after a pay-per-view. Unless it's implied that they're getting like a massive payday or something like that, like was done with Rollins when he turned on the Shield.
I will say the one thing about Finn that held, and I noticed it at the end of that match, is they were all standing over just Finn. And like, I don't know if that camera shot, I didn't watch that match, rewatch it, the pay-per-view and that match or anything, but I'm sure that it was this camera shot of all 3 of them laying right over Finn. And maybe that was the foreshadowing in some way we were supposed to see of that something was going to happen with him. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely was a shocker, and not because of like good storytelling.
And if you're gonna bring Edge as a babyface back, how do you erase those 3 months of promos where he's basically crapping on all the fans, saying you don't matter anymore? How do you turn that around? It's always funny to me how you turn someone babyface in a heel group by kicking them out of the heel group rather than them leaving the heel group and saying, "Screw you guys, I'm out of here."
Screw you guys, I'm going home. I think I'd like to see him be kind of like a lone wolf tweener for a while. Just kind of be like, hey, nobody you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody likes you. He doesn't have any friends. Or it'd be weird if like he just completely crapped on everybody and all of a sudden he has friends again. He shouldn't have any friends. He should be a lone wolf. With all apologies to Baron Corbin.
Well, Baron Corbin's not going back to that gimmick seemingly anytime soon. No. So,
and if they're leading to us, so how I imagine it is if he's out for a couple weeks, Finn Balor and Damian Priest have some nice spots in the Money in the Bank match. They're running rampant, whatever. Edge comes back, costs them Money in the Bank somehow, and we get one of them at SummerSlam. Like that's in the immediate term, I think would make the most sense. Then you have a big built-in SummerSlam matchup that they can market and everything. Because I feel like Finn is definitely we're going to get a lot of teases towards Finn winning Money in the Bank the next couple weeks. Like they're going to book them strong going into that as a group, I would assume. I just wouldn't want to put anything on them. And obviously Rhea's in the biggest position. She has the actual title match going into that. I don't think that she's taking that off of Bianca, but who knows? Who fucking knows at this point?
To Ernie's point, if they book Edge coming back, kind of like the way they booked AJ Styles back in the day in TNA, where he was doing this sort of lone person thing where he wasn't with the good guys, but he wasn't with the bad guys either, because he was kind of just disillusioned with everybody within TNA at that time. If they book Edge that way, sort of ease him back into being a babyface, then I could see that happen.
It will be interesting. And I think it will lead to a great Finn Balor Edge match down the line, which I would be very much looking forward to. Go ahead.
I'll say this: enough with the turns of Edge. I mean, he's turned babyface to heel like twice in the past 2. I mean,
he's Big Show.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Big Show thinks it's ridiculous. Like,
oh man, they got rid of Big Show. Someone had to take his role. Apparently, we never thought it would be Edge. All right, anything else before we wrap up here? It's a great conversation. I'm excited to see what happens out of Dominion tonight. I'm really excited for that show in general. All right.
By the way, kind of ridiculous that Dominion's happening tonight, the same weekend that Jurassic World Dominion releases in theaters. I don't know, a little weird.
Great marketing.
Great marketing, exactly.
While Partham's wearing the Jurassic Park parody shirt.
Hell yeah.
The T-Rex is going over.
All right. Well, it's not wrestling with your torn pec. It's wrestling with emotion. That'll do it for our show. Follow us all on Twitter at whatever. I don't remember what our things are.
Trainwreck Sports without the O.
Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud.
Yeah, see, I don't even say the podcast thing anymore because if people are listening to a podcast, you know where you get your podcast from. Like it's like a podcastception thing for me. But yes, all those places, YouTube, everything, all that good stuff. You guys have a great weekend. Folks, have a great weekend.
Good night now.
That exactly.